Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melisa Caprio.
Hello, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. Happy 2021, everyone. I can't believe this past year. It has been a wild ride, to say the least. I hope everyone is doing well. I am really excited about the energy around a new year. Now, I know things haven't changed as far as the virus goes, and a lot of people are dealing with that personally. And of course, the situations that have been going on for the last so many years in our country and what's going on because of COVID. But truthfully, I always feel like personally, a new year, it's a great time for a new reset because we get to start again. Where do we want to go personally in our lives this year? I have some really exciting things that I want to do. And the top one is I decided, I've been wanting to do it for a while, and it just kind of formed in my brain last month as I was wrapping up December, that I'm going to start my new book, and I am starting it this month. And I'm going to get into more details about my book later. So I don't want to give away too much at the moment, but what I will give you a hint about is that it has to do with my Magic Monday messages. And I'm really excited about it and how I've imagined it in my mind's eye, what it's going to be. But when we imagine stuff, we shall see how it unfolds. And I will get into much more of that as I'm going along in my journey of writing. Now, speaking of Magic Monday message postcards, this week, on the first Monday of the new year, the postcard I photographed has the affirmation, "and so it begins." And like I just mentioned, I like the energy of the new year because we can reset, start again, create something new. Every day, every hour, every moment in our lives, we are dealing with the new beginnings, right? Most new beginnings are small, but if we think about it, they actually turn out to be big things because everything that starts with a beginning. Like the oak tree begins as an acorn. A new book begins with a first sentence. The words, "I have a dream," inspire the beginning of a new phrase in history. A new, better, happier, more fulfilling life begins with us appreciating the power of new beginnings. And beginnings they can appear small and insignificant, but reality, they are very significant in our lives. Why? Because a beginning, by definition, is a cause. To begin something is to cause the movement of energy. And you guys know I talk about energy all the time and how, like energy attracts like. Everything is energy. And as energy begins to move, our life begins to move. And this is what is cause and effect. And this is why every beginning leads to a result or leads to the effect. And probably the easiest way to get started is just start, tomorrow, the beginning of a new day. How do you begin each new day? Maybe you want to change a little something. Maybe it's get up a little earlier and journal. Maybe it's, start taking walks in nature. It's just start with anything. It's not like a resolution. It's just like a slight change in something that's going to get you to a goal that you have in your mind that you want to get somewhere. So just start. Start in the morning as soon as your feet touch the floor. And if you want to see the week's Magic Monday message that I just shared, you can go to any of my social media platforms or my website, Postcards to the Universe. I share them each week across all my social media platforms. And I would love it if you would join my public Facebook group, Postcards of Love, to share and see inspirational posts and beautiful photographs. So please go there and join me if you want. Next week, I'm just going to tell you that my guest who's coming next week her name is Liani Kocher. a formal trial attorney turned fiction author and blogger who makes learning intellectual property for creatives easy to understand and entertaining. She has over a decade of experience as an intellectual property attorney at one of the top law firms in the world, where she handles complex actions involving intellectual property, trade secret, entertainment, and sports law. And she's going to share with us creatives how to protect our own intellectual and artistic property and how to market ourselves. Now, for those of you who were here last week, my guest today was going to be my returning guest, who you've heard on my show before, Reverend Gregory Postman. But Gregory had a family emergency and had to cancel, and he's going to be back sometime in February. But it's okay, because I'm super excited that I have a professional astrologer on, Kathy Biehl, today. And Kathy was kind enough to jump in literally at the last minute. And we're going to talk about astrologically what is wrapping up from 2020 and what we can be looking forward to in 2021. So I'm just going to give you a little background on Kathy and then bring her out. So Kathy Biehl, a professional astrologer who helps individuals and business owners make decisions and better understand themselves, their options, and the people in their lives. Her counseling and forecasting draw on her diverse life experience as an attorney. So funny, I have 2 attorneys back to back, a small business owner, a performing artist, and a writer. She is a tested and verified member of Best American Psychics and a longtime contributor to OMTimes magazine, where you can read her monthly and moon forecasts, as well as her annual guide to handling Mercury retrograde. And if you want to find out more about her website is empowermentunlimited.net. And then you can read all about Kathy. Welcome, Kathy. Thanks again so much for jumping in at the last minute. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Talk astrology? Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, good. Okay, so before we jump in, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Oh, I'm someone who's straddled a rational way of life, a very logical, rational way of life, and a mystical fantasy way of living pretty much since I was a kid. And I say that I've built my life and career on the bridge between intuition and the rational mind. And I operate out of both ends of it. And I have found that the more that I approach everything from the intuitive, energetic, and the more all of the rational and mundane stuff just flows. I still do a lot of different things. I juggle several different passions, income streams, whatever. But it's just the way my life works, and it all seems to make sense somehow.
That's interesting that you say it like that, because I do have that too. I have the rational, and then I have the mystical part of me, and I somehow have made them kind of merge together, and it works for me.
And the interesting thing that goes along with that is I put all of the metaphysical stuff aside when I went to law school, and while I was studying for the bar, so 3 years after it was like a pressure cooker blew the lid off. Stuff that had been building up and building up and building up just came out of nowhere. I started having precognitive dreams, which I historically had never had. And it made for a very interesting summer.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. Oh my God.
It became clear, you just can't ignore this stuff. It's a part of you, and it will derail you if you don't pay attention to it. So now I just pay attention to it. It's a great navigational tool. So
yeah, it really is. So a lot of us know, our astrological sign, and that's basically all we know, right? And a lot of us that's all we read. We'll read, what's happening for, Virgo, what's happening for Gemini, and then, we move along. But it's so much more than that. So I don't know how to even ask you the question, but can you explain astrology to us and why it's important in in
60 seconds?
Well, in I guess layman terms for us novices who only know about reading about our own, sun sign.
When you're born, your personality reflects the energies that were influencing the world at the time of your birth. And that's captured in the birth chart. And there are many parts to a personality that work together. And it's often simplistic to just look at your sun sign because for a lot of people, there are parts of their chart that are actually stronger than their sun sign. So, I mean, there are a lot of people who will, and these memes go around and people will send me messages going, that's not right for me. And I'll go, well, it's because, come on. So anyway, the three and different parts of the chart interact with other parts. It's all interconnected. It's this giant organism. And you can look at it as a blueprint or a map or a wiring guide of different areas of life in which you're predisposed to have energies in a certain way. But there's usually a spectrum that they can play out. So it's not fatalistic. The way that you're brought up can affect the way you express certain things. And
of course.
Yeah, it's just a really, I find, a really valuable way to first understand yourself and look at your own motivations and approaches differently, and an excellent way to understand other people.
Yeah. So, and you do that, right? For your clients, you'll create a birth chart for them?
Oh, well, that's what everything starts from.
That's where everything starts from. Yeah, I thought that you did that. Just wanted to make sure. I've had mine done years ago. And, it was really interesting. And like I said, I was telling Kathy on a phone call before the show that it's only been within the last few years that I even considered about my moon sign and my rising sign and where my houses are and all that stuff. But I found out that I'm a Gemini and a double Leo, which is kind of interesting because there's a lot of things about Gemini that people are like, well, that doesn't fit you. And I'm like, well, if you read about my moon in Leo, you'll see that it does. Right? So it's kind of cool to I recommend it if you're looking to gift yourself something really cool for beginning 2021 and where you're at right now in your life, where you started from, do that for yourself. That's a nice gift, don't you think, to give yourself the start of a new year?
Very much so, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's so many ways you can go about this. You can use it in therapy. You can use it to attack a certain problem. Most of the people who come to me, if they're not wanting to talk about relationships, are looking for what's going on in their life right now and what's getting activated. And you apply what's happening in the sky now to your birth chart, and it gives you an idea of what the weather is that you're going through. And I will not predict specific events, but general influences. And I work a lot with cycles, like when something happened before, and you can tie where you are now to that and see, oh, that's how I dealt with it then. But I'm older now, and I've been through things, and I'm reacting differently. So.
Yeah, and I just learned from a friend recently about when your Saturn returns in your chart, what that means and how significant that is. And I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, where's my Saturn return? When's it coming? What should I look out for? Oh, no, But you don't realize how important what's going on. I mean, this is how they navigated for thousands of years by looking up at the sky, right? Before we got this technological stuff.
Initially, astronomy and astrology were one science.
Yeah, I had read that. And it's interesting how and I know many leaders and politicians have their professional astrologers that they work with before they make some major decisions for, states in their country, which is really interesting.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I want to kind of, before we get into 2021 and what we can look at, I want to talk about, maybe you want to share what you think were some of the biggest highlights maybe of 2020 that happened, that are wrapping up, that we can, consider right now.
2020 was one long evolutionary process of deconstruction that worked deconstruction of givens in our lives, of foundations, of things that we picked up through ancestral lines, of patterns, of institutions, of stuff that we always thought was going to be there, and then it just started collapsing. And the collapse didn't happen out of the blue. We've had evolutionary stressors building since 2008, and there are certain years where they got really intense. 2008, 2012 to 15, and then last year just brought a lot of shifts in, 2019 started, shifts in family dynamics and things between the different generations, and lots of ancestral clearing out. It's just fascinating, the things I saw going on. And 2020 began with kind of putting a new containment on all of that evolutionary stuff, and then working it over all year long from many different angles, and brought corruption to the surface. It brought personal demons to the surface, stuff you thought you had resolved years ago, like, oh, nope, it's still there. Hi. Hello.
Yeah, I know, and there's a lot more that's coming, but I just looked down at my clock and I see that we're going to come to a break in a few seconds. So I'm like, I don't want to delve into it anymore and then have to cut you off. So why don't we take our 2 minutes right now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about 2020, and then we'll go into where, we want to go. We need to know about the past, but we want to look forward, right? That's where we want to go. We want to look forward. So we're going to take our break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. That's okay. Welcome back. So Kathy and I, of course, were chit-chatting during the break, so you may have heard a little bit of that. I'm so excited to have her on. She's a professional astrologer. And if you were listening to the first third of the show. I break it up in thirds now because we take 2 breaks. We're talking about a little bit of the highlights from 2020. So is there anything that you want to specifically point out besides the deconstruction? I did want to ask you, and maybe this will be a good leeway, about this great conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn on December 21st. And maybe you can tell us, what did that mean? What does that mean? How is that significant?
Actually, that's point 3 of what I wanted to bring up. Can I skip in point 2 real quick?
Yeah,
point
please.
2 is starting a complete revisiting about the power of the mind. Mm-hmm. That was the thoughts that we say, what we focus on, what we perseverate on, the information streams we use, and the belief systems that we have, that we've developed about reality as a consequence of all of this. So, and there's also a vibe of a split reality coming through all of this, which will die down by the end of 2021. So there's your first spoiler, but that's part of it. So we're in a revisiting the power of words. And we can see in the national news on a constant basis the power of words and the action that it's inciting people to. So, and in our own lives, you see what you're underscoring in your life by where your thoughts keep going. So that's theme 2. And then theme 3 sets the tone for all of 2021. And that is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happened on the solstice. Now, Jupiter is an expansive influence, very optimistic. Saturn is a constraining influence. And I call him the planet of adulting. All right. Saturn is the guy that wants you to pay your bills, keep a schedule, have a job, do what you say you're going to do. And Jupiter is a planet of an influence of indulgence, and Saturn is, there are consequences. I will reward hard work, and I'm going to slam you if you screw off. So these two slipped into the sign of Aquarius on the 21st. Now, they meet every 20 years. And for the longest time, they've been meeting in earth signs. They did meet in once in an air sign in recent history. But this marks a big shift. They haven't met together in Aquarius for hundreds of years. And so we have a 12-year cycle coinciding with a 29.5 to 30-year cycle. In other words, Jupiter was last in Aquarius 12 years ago. Saturn was last in this spot in the early 90s, like 91 to 93.
Okay.
And they're in the sign that has to do with networks, community, progressiveness, friendships, intellectual approach to things, living in the future, technology. Saturn previewed this time mid-March. On March 20th of 2020, Saturn scooched into Aquarius for maybe 10 weeks till the very beginning of July. And that coincided with the new concept of social distancing and shutdown. And it's like being prevented from your networks, and life went online.
Right.
And now we are in an even bigger moment of shutdown. Jupiter and Saturn meet, and then London goes on lockdown.
Interesting.
Yeah.
California went completely on lockdown.
Right. Oh,
LA. Of course, Florida's not, but that's another story. Florida's just like, whatever you want to do, I don't care. It's crazy. We're not on lockdown, but everybody else is pretty much.
That's one aspect of it. And Saturn's going to be in this sign all year and the year after. So it's going to be slow growing, slow moving. And so we should expect that we're going to be living in a new way of interacting with each other with more distance. Aquarius isn't soft and yummy energy. It's not huggy energy. It's,
Every Aquarius I know. Yeah, I was going to say every Aquarius I know. My father, some other people that I know are just not that way. So it's funny that you say that. Yes, I could see that. Well, it's interesting that what you said about words when you were talking about with how the power of words and the effects, because that's what everything about my whole movement is. Postcards is. It's about the words we say that come out of our mouth, the things we think, to the words we say, to the actions that we do, to the energy that we put forth. So I'm very conscious, and I've gotten so much better out of it, doing it over the years. I'm very conscious of the words that come out of my mouth. Not always, of course, not always, but I am so much better than I used to be, and how that really is a reflection of where we're going. You want to know where you're going. Look at the words you're saying right now. And that's where you're going to end up going. And it's really, really important. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I like to reiterate that fact. Okay, so we know what Saturn is going to be doing. Now, what about Jupiter being in? How long is Jupiter hanging around?
Well, now, Jupiter usually spends a year or so in a sign.
Okay.
And normally what happens is Jupiter will enter a sign and he'll be there for a few weeks. And then he will retrograde back into where he was for just a little bit. And then he'll move forward and go all the way through that sign. This time, Jupiter is rushing through Aquarius until the middle of May. And then he's going to zoom into Pisces, the next sign, until the end of July. And then he'll spend the rest of the year in Aquarius again. So we get this bifurcated experience. So, and then the only contact that Jupiter and Saturn are going to have during all of this is what launched it. Now, Jupiter, besides being expansive, always brings a silver lining. Always brings a silver lining. So there is something in this of knowing who your friends really are, finding ways to really make the most out of what is going on. I am noticing a difference in the vibe of the Zoom meetings that I'm in. Since when it first started, it was like people are like, "Oh, there you are." I want to, and I've always got for friends who want to have cocktail parties and stuff. And now it's very selective people, very committed and extraordinarily appreciative of each other. I'm also finding really vibrant, creative communities forming using electronic media as a consequence. And that would fit with this. Support groups, you just watch. I mean, the arts community, the creatives are scrambling to find a way to continue since venues are shut. People aren't performing in person. I've been in a number of Zoom productions, and some of them are actually extremely high quality technically. So that's something that's going on with this. And so everybody has some area of their life in which there is the opportunity to build something lasting that's extraordinarily positive, that requires that you suit up and act like a grown-up and take responsibility, possibly for other people in your life. I mean, this is responsibility for the interconnectedness of us.
Sure.
And this also reflects political organizing. That's part of what's going on. Anyway, everyone has this at their disposal this year. And like I said, last year there was a big event at the start of the year, and then it got worked over all year. This year, the big event that launched it happened on the solstice in December, and that gets worked over all year because each of these bodies, expansive body and the structure-loving body, are having clashes with the iconoclast of the sky, the radical change agent, Uranus. I call him the advocate of alternate viewpoints. He lobs lightning bolts. He breaks locks. He throws monkey wrenches. There's an unexpectedness. And he's in the sign that he rules Aquarius. So they're all kind of like doing his dance somehow.
Okay.
And there will be demands for, there'll be some, this is going to involve the economy and money because Uranus is in Taurus, which deals with that. It will involve food. It will involve the arts because Taurus also is highly creative. And Jupiter pumps him up this month, and then Saturn goes to it with him from February through the end of the year. So we don't just have this new construct. Actually, here's what it is. We're going from deconstruction to a new construct that is unlike what we have lived in before, and we're kind of tweaking it all year.
Okay. And that means it's going to be a lot of positive things, but that doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable, correct? Just because we're seeing positive things happening, it doesn't mean as we're going through it, everything we see or experience is going to feel good necessarily. Maybe we may be like, "Ooh, what's that? I don't really like that," kind of, right?
Yeah, well,
as these things are happening.
Uranus first moved into Taurus in the middle of May 2018, and I created a guide that's available at my site, and the image that I have for the cover is lightning hitting a tree and going down to the ground and through its roots.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, there are people who are, there are people for whom this is physically, there's like physical energy running through them they're not used to.
Yes. I definitely, I'm very I'm an empath, so I feel a lot of other people's energy. I notice how my body feels after I talk to certain people on the phone. I'm like, you didn't protect yourself. You didn't ground yourself. So, well, I'm glad you mentioned, because you said it's going to affect, what do you mean by food? Because I was actually going to ask, like, how going through some major themes, like, how is it going to affect finances? Because you said money, you said art, and you said food. And what do you mean by food, though? Like, we're going to have food shortage issues, or you mean, like, we're going to be sharing and growing our own food?
Both.
Okay.
Now, let's think of what's been going on, all right? Since the last couple of years, there's been a rise on social media of plant-based chefs.
True.
It's like it's like an epidemic. There's been a lot of things coming to light about stuff going on at meat processing plants, especially with the intersection with COVID. And a lot of people, without being told, I just see a huge, more like community, collective gardening, collective local markets, going in for co-ops, people deciding they want to try their hand at making things they didn't make before, at growing some aspects of their food. And it's bringing it
too.
Yeah, bringing it down to a simpler, more immediate level, and not being so reliant on some kind of corporate distribution. I mean, when the shutdown hit, think of the things that suddenly became impossible to find. Flour and yeast in the New York City area. Good luck. It was just
I heard that.
The hoarding hit. It wasn't just toilet paper. It was real basic things.
Yeah, the hoarding hit, which is interesting because we didn't have to hoard. You just buy what you usually buy, and it just, it's crazy. And I do see more people cooperating with each other and more people combining resources to help get through that, which makes me feel, happy to see that, instead of the competition. Of course we see it because the news likes to focus on all the bad stuff, but there's a lot of stories out there that there's really good stuff happening during all of this. And that's where that I like to try to focus, my energy, because it keeps my energy up. And keeping our energy up also keeps our immunity up, right?
Yep.
So we want to do that. So I do want to talk about, so what do you think about, you said money. Money is very important to people. What do you see about 2020 with money? Before we start talking about the virus, I want to talk about the money first.
Well, we're going to see a lot of instability in the economy, and then dealing with it. And I will say that Uranus in Taurus last happened during the late 30s and early 40s, and it coincides with the New Deal. It coincides with Social Security being founded, and all kinds of government programs that had to do with the environment and a different use of resources and putting people to work. So I think that there will be, just given so many people who've been out of work, or there's been instability about whether they could go to work, small businesses that are shuttering, actually even big businesses that are shuttering, there will be an economic fallout from that. And then there will very likely be a government intercession and programs to try to address it and come up with new ways of building jobs.
That's good. That's good, though, to hear, because we need that. You know, a lot of people are suffering, and, this last year especially has been... I felt like I was in... did you ever watch Stranger Things, or did you not watch Stranger Things?
I have not seen it, but I can see where you're going with this.
Okay, so there's the upside down world, or the Twilight Zone would also be a good way to say it. Like, I felt like this last year that I've been living in the upside down world or the Twilight Zone. Like, some of the things that I've been... Your mouth is open because you just can't believe some of the things that you're hearing and seeing. And it's been just crazy. So hearing that there's going to be programs that are going to come together. There's going to be thinking outside the box of ways that we can support each other globally, because what I'm seeing is that more and more of us are waking up to the fact that what affects the one affects the whole. Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. So we're at our second break time. So let's take our break here, and then we'll come back. And I want to ask you about relationships and, of course, the virus. Stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. So if you've been listening to the show, we've been talking about astrology with my guest, Kathy Biehl. And Kathy, I was saying before that I'm seeing that more and more people are waking up to the feeling of how what happens to the one happens to the whole, about how we're all connected. And I just find that, I've noticed that personally more this year. And what do you think? Do you see that too?
Yes, and that's a reflection of not just Saturn in Aquarius, which is things bringing home to us how we are all part of a network, but also this revisiting of belief systems that I mentioned, which has to do with eclipses and the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius, and it's just causing us to rethink the way we view reality.
Yeah. Exactly. And what do you think about, I know I have to talk about it, COVID, what do you see happening? Is there anything that the planets are telling us about this virus for this year?
Well, I have a different take on it than some astrologers. Some astrologers are looking at the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that started 2020 as being the signature for it. But I'm looking at what's going on with Neptune. Neptune is a planet of, I call him the cosmic fog machine. Neptune represents stuff you can't touch, can't see. It can be highly transcendent, inspirational, loving, Looney Tunes, gaslighting, you name it. And there's been an influence pumping it up very, 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 very strongly. And it certainly would fit something you can't see that affects the air and your breathing. I see it, and it's going to be less of a factor starting to break up by May. And then in a completely different relationship to everything by December. So we'll be in a different world by December. But between now and May, I would tell people, be very careful.
So continue what we're doing, socially distancing, wearing our mask, and the whole thing. Anything about the vaccine? Are you seeing anything or any of the planets, go for health or... Yeah,
I don't. Well, I think this would fit with some of that, and different ways of going about stuff with Uranus and Taurus, new ways of dealing with the body. But I don't myself know what astrologically might be a signature for a vaccine.
Okay.
So I'll just leave it at that. All I can tell you is whatever we're in right now, this big morass, this not knowing, and it also that also accounts for bifurcated reality, the dual realities, the people looking at the same set of facts and coming up with utterly different takes on what it means. That's all part of it, okay? That's all part of this influence, which starts to break up at the end of May. And then is not a factor by December. It's like it dissipates, like the clouds just kind of go off.
Well, that's good.
There.
That's hopeful.
Yes.
That's very hopeful.
Yes.
That's very hopeful. Good. Yes, that is very, very hopeful. And what about traveling? Anything we're traveling for us? I mean, or does it look like from the planets that we're all should be, still staying home? I mean, obviously, until you said for at least the next 6 months, maybe, but opening up, is that going to be opening back up?
It's possible this summer because the eclipses that are happening now do deal with travel. They do.
Okay, I was going to ask you about those eclipses, so why don't we segue into that too? Go ahead.
Well, because Gemini is short distance travel and it's driving your car around, doing all this stuff, and then Sagittarius is going way far away. Taking boats, taking airplanes to another continent. And it may be until this summer when the next round of eclipses hit before there's any kind of sense of, all right, now we're moving from one way of being to another. And again, everything feels like it normalizes and there's the new mode pretty strongly into place by the end of December. So this is a huge transition year for many, many things. And actually the image that I got for it associated with the solar eclipse in Sagittarius that happened in December right before the solstice, right before Jupiter and Saturn met. The image that I got was of a giant stargate that we were going through and having basically no choice and not knowing exactly when you could walk into the stargate or you could just get sucked into it, but not knowing exactly when it's going to close. And when it closes behind us. We are not going to slide back into the world as it was. And in fact, the image I have for my January forecast, which is actually, it was in packing with an air filter for a highly cutting edge filtering system, said, say hello to a whole new normal.
Yeah.
So
I can feel that. I can feel that when you're saying it. Yeah, I feel it. I see it. It's, well, you know what they say, all the dark and all the muck and all the stuff has to come up to the light for it to be transformed. So if we are moving through portals and the energy of the planet is raising and our vibration is raising, you know, all that dark lower stuff has got to, you know, be transmuted. And the only way it's going to is if we see it. We have to be a witness to it. So,
yep.
Yeah. So I see it too. Oh, so let's talk about, okay, because you talk about, I was looking on if you go to OMTimes magazine and you look up Kathy's Biehl's, you can see her blogs that she writes, and you talk about Mercury retrograde. Now, personally, Mercury retrogrades, I kind of like. I kind of dig. Being a Gemini, Mercury is my ruler. A lot of people freak out about it. Oh, don't do this. But I find I'm very creative during Mercury retrograde. So, you know, people get all wrapped up in it. So why don't you share, first of all, what that means? What the heck's a Mercury retrograde for those who don't know?
It's when the planet that rules communication and transportation and gadgets, I call him the ruler of
What? Gadgets?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Gadgets, and getting around. There we go.
There you
and
go.
Getting around. Anyway, it's an optical illusion. It's when there's a difference in the orbital speed between his and the Earth, and it appears that he's moving backwards. So during this time, he's also really, really close to the Earth. During this time, the things that he rules don't operate by their normal rules. So that means there can be high level of confusion. This is when you're driving, and every time you make a turn, there's a detour. This does happen. When things just take long, stuff doesn't make sense. Everything starts breaking down.
Yeah, emails get lost, phone calls get dropped, the computer won't turn on, all that stuff. Yeah.
This is an excellent time to research, to go back over old business, to stop, get quiet, organize things, get your thoughts collected, figure out what really happened. It's like a great going in time. And it's good for writing. It's really good for writing. In fact, people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth chart are often really good writers because they're kind of naturally inclined towards going in. And again, I will point out, I will tie this to the notion of where your mind goes and what you get, because Mercury retrograde has become one of the darlings of the internet, and everyone has something to say about it. And like all these memes, and oh my God, Mercury's retrograde, and all these horrible things happen to me. Well, you know what? If you focus on a lot of really horrible stuff, you're going to experience everything that way. And sometimes I get to the point where I just laugh, like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, see, that's why I was saying I like them, so I don't have any of those issues. I mean, don't get me wrong. Emails sometimes go, or, something like will happen, little things, but that can happen anytime. But there's something about the energy that it maybe because I'm sensitive to it, because it is a ruler, Mercury rules Gemini, that I feel it. That I do. I find that I get super creative, and I like my internal times, because that's when a lot of cool stuff comes out.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So they don't freak me out like some people. But that's why I wanted to bring it up, because you talk about it, you write about it. And like you said, everybody knows basically their sun sign and Mercury's in retrograde, because everybody posts memes and GIFs and this and talks about it and oh my God and it's and it, So now it's like become like a social, everybody knows about it on social media. So for those of you, listening, don't worry about a Mercury retrograde. It's okay. How many do we have a year? 3 or 4? I always forget.
It depends.
Okay. So how many are 2021 having?
3.
3. Okay.
And the first one starts at the end of January. Mm-hmm. And they're all in air signs, so they all involve intellectual energy, which will have one of 2 extreme effects. Mm-hmm. One of them is they could be easy peasy, like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Mercury is happy in air, but that also could mean that it's all the easier to screw things up. So
right. Now,
read more in my
go ahead.
In my guided on time. Read more in my guided on time.
Right. And then, how many eclipses? The eclipses are coming up in the summer this year.
How many are we having this year? We're having 1, 2, 3. 4.
Wow.
Maybe 5 now. Hold on, I can tell you exactly. And now,
oh my God! Does it feel like we're getting more eclipse than we ever did, or is it just that now I'm aware of it, or before I wasn't paying attention? Okay, that's what it is.
There are only 4 in 2021. Okay. There were 6 in 2020. There are 4 in 2021.
That's what I thought. Okay, and the eclipses, like, what should we look out for? What is being eclipsed this 2021?
This has to do with where our mind goes and the beliefs we use. So it has a lot to do with bias, with prejudice, with your thought loops, with the quality of information what your information diet is, what you talk about. And there's something too here about how we actually physically get around. So we are reorienting ourselves to the notion of moving around on the planet.
Interesting.
So I would imagine that the airlines are going to go through massive changes in how they deal with things.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wish they would just upgrade for everybody. Where it used to be a pleasure to fly before 9/11, and now since 9/11 it hasn't. If they could totally revamp the whole way people fly, it would be nice. Right?
Well, that's a possibility.
Right, and, it is. Anything's possible.
With Jupiter, you bet. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so...
Yeah, Jupiter rules Sag. So what should we be what are some significant dates that we should be aware of coming up? And just, read about it, look up in the sky, kind of be aware of.
Middle of February, end of June, and Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. Those are big milestones in moving the building blocks around in our new construct.
So which planets are going to be, what's going to be activating?
That's when Saturn is squaring Uranus. A square is a challenging energy that demands action. So the guy that likes structure is going to be in a challenge with the guy that likes to blow things up. And Uranus,
see.
Yeah, and Uranus is the guy that's further out. So, and he rules the sign that Saturn's in. So probably Uranus is going to win in each of these. And it doesn't. Okay, what could be blowing up is the way you're thinking about it.
Right. Yeah, let's be clear. Yeah, let's not say that there's going to be Yeah, it could be the way you're thinking about something. You can have an aha. Your whole mind can be blown about something. Your whole life could blow up, and your whole life could take a new direction. Right. So those are the things that can blow up. So we don't necessarily mean dynamite blowing up. Yeah. Oh my God. We only have like 2 minutes. Is there anything that you think is really important that we should know before we kind of wrap up?
You got to have friends. Treat them well. They're your currency.
They're your currency. That's really, really good. And what is the best way for people to reach out to you, connect with you if they want to have their chart done or, just, I don't know, have a session? Do you do private sessions with people?
Yes. And the easiest way is to go to my website, empowermentunlimited.net. I have a weekly podcast. I have my mooncasts and my monthly outlooks there. I have recorded talks that explain what's going on. I've got guided visualizations that work with planetary energies, and you can book a session with me using either astrology or tarot, but most people go with astrology. I'm on Facebook. My Facebook page is Empowerment Unlimited, and I also have a group that you have to get membership into, the Astro Insight Lounge. It's free, but I usually prefer that somebody have some inkling of how astrology works to get in there. I post a lot of astrology in action in that group. Like, here's how the archetypes are playing. Here's the aspect. Here's how it's playing out in the news.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you want to have that. Okay. Well, thank you again so very much for being here with me today. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, guys. Thank you for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. Thank you for listening, and I'm wishing everyone an abundant year filled with joy. I will see you all next week. Peace.